Hey everybody, if you are new to Lorcana, this is a great video for you. We're going to go over the fundamentals of deck building so you can start winning quickly. Now, you may have heard of something called the metagame. If the rules of the game describe how you actually play your cards against your opponent, the metagame describes how you build your deck to face the other decks that are out there. And in the previous video, we talked about how there are three basic kinds: an aggro deck, which tries to win quickly, a control deck, which slows down your opponent and wins late in the game, and then a mid-range deck, which falls somewhere in the middle. And ideally, there should be this rock, paper, scissors going on between the three of them. So which one are you going to start with? Well, we are going to start by building an aggro deck. And the reason why is because it's the most straightforward and it's the easiest to pick up the skills and master. In the next part of the video, I'm going to be showing you how to use Dreamborn.ink to build your deck, how to choose your ink color and key cards for our aggro strategy, and then how to choose cards for filler to smooth out your resource curve and maintain card advantage. And if you don't know what those terms mean, don't worry, we'll get there. And then finally, we're going to export the deck into Pixelborn. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then I'll play an exhibition match with this particular deck. And before we get too far into it, I do have a confession to make. I am not a trading card game champion. In fact, I am a thoroughly average player. But with this deck, this one I'm going to show you, my win rate is 65%. The point being, if I can do it, so can you. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, we are at the webpage dreamborn.ink. That's I-N-K, not I-N-C. And we are going to just go ahead and create a deck. So our key strategy for the aggro deck is to win by gaining as much lore as quickly as possible. So let us just imagine for a second that we were able to just play a Lilo every single turn. On turn 1, we play a Lilo but can't quest. On turn 2, we drop another Lilo and the first one quests. On turn 3, we drop another Lilo and the first 2 quests. All the way up to on turn 5, where you have 4 Lilos questing for 8 and you win the game by acquiring 20 lore. But Lilo's only a 1-drop, she's kind of weak. So maybe there's other characters that can also quest quickly. So we're going to try to find low drop characters with a high quest. And our secondary goal is going to be to protect them. And our tertiary goal is going to be think about the metagame. We're going to try to counter other decks that are out there. Find ways to counter popular mid-range builds and counter popular control builds. So I always start by adding 4 of the cards that I know are absolutely key to my strategy. So start off by adding 4 Lilos. 4. Okay. And another card that is key right here is going to be the way to protect Lilo. Remember our secondary goal? And Simba right here has this fantastic feature called Bodyguard. As long as Simba is exerted, I should say any character that can challenge Simba has to challenge him, right? You can't challenge somebody else as long as Simba is exerted. So Simba acts as a great protector for Lilo. Turn 1, you drop a Lilo. Turn 2, you drop a Simba to protect her, so she can keep questing and your opponents have to get through him first. And scrolling back up, Maximus is just the big version of Simba. And back down, Rapunzel fulfills our secondary goal of protecting questers, and she has the ability to let you draw cards, which can help our primary goal of getting low-cost questers out quickly. Up next, we have Stitch. Now, Stitch by himself is a completely unremarkable card. There are lots of 1-drop inkables that have the buy for 2/2. He only quests for 1, but with that 2 health, you might be able to get 1 or 2 lore out of him before he's popped. But what we're really interested in is Big Stitch, Stitch Rockstar. Stitch Rockstar quests for 3, and he can shift 4, which means on your 4th turn, you can drop him on top of this Stitch and quest right away for 3. 3/5 body is pretty strong, he's sticky, he's going to be around for a while. But more important than all of that, he has this feature called Adoring Fans. Whenever you play a character with cost 2 or less, you may exert them to draw a card. And remember, our deck is filled with low-cost questers. So when you pay Stitch, you can play another low-cost card, exert it because they can't quest on that first turn, and draw hopefully another low-cost quester. Absolutely S-tier card and a defining feature of aggro decks. We can put 4 of the little Stitch in, but only 2 of the big Stitch, because this one will grow into it. Rounding off our main Amber cards, we're going to have Be Our Guest. Now this card is an action that is also a song, meaning that you can have a character that has cost 2 or greater exert to play it instead of having to spend your own ink. and it also lets you search for a character. So ideally you can exert Simba, who wants to be exerted for the bodyguard feature, or better yet, Maximus, in order to gain a character that can quest for 3 lore. So we're going to go ahead and add 4 of these in because it's fulfilling that primary goal. So what is our second ink choice going to be? Well, Amethyst is a very strong candidate to match with Amber. Cards like Maleficent are also a 1-drop that quests for 2, and draw cards like Friends on the Other Side, again, help you get those questers out quickly. But we're going to go with Emerald, and the reason why is because of that tertiary goal. Emerald has the best cards that can counter other decks that are out there, the mid-range and the control counters. To show you what I mean, let's go ahead and look at our first ×4 card, Flynn Rider. He has this ability, Here Comes the Smolder. When this character is challenged, the challenging player chooses and discards a card. So that is going to slow down your mid-range decks and sort of stop your control decks before they can get a foothold. In addition, he is also a low-cost card that quests for 2, so it's fulfilling that primary goal. Hans isn't bad either. It's again a lower drop character, but it quests for 3, one of the lowest in the game. But another star right here is Genie. Genie is evasive, meaning that he can only be challenged by other characters that have evasive, so he's going to constantly get that 2 lore unless your opponent has a character that can specifically stop him. In addition, he has this feature called Disappear, that when you play Genie, you bounce another character back. Again, this is going to stop those mid-range decks from doing their main thing, and if you can play it late in the game, it's going to slow down a control deck with their big, powerful characters. But because Genie doesn't fulfill that primary objective of questing quickly, we're only going to add 2 of him to our deck. Scrolling down, we see the 5-star card of Emerald, Kuzco. He is great because he quests for a whole lot, and he has this ability called Ward, which means he can't be targeted by things like Banishment or Fire the Cannons, or he can't be chosen at all. He also has a feature called No Touchy, that whenever he is challenged and banished, you banish the opposing character. So he's always going to be questing for 3, and whenever someone tries to challenge him and stop him, your opponent's going to lose that character. Only slightly worse than Kuzco is Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter is a 5-drop, but it's inkable unlike Kuzco, and he quests for 3. He also gives you the ability to draw cards. So this will come out later in the game, but still going to help you keep ahead and keep the ink that you need. Scrolling down, we come to Tinkerbell. Now, as a 4-drop that only quests for 2, Tinkerbell only marginally fulfills our primary objective as being a fast quester, but she has evasive. And remember, our secondary goal is we want to protect our questers, and evasive is going to make her much harder to kill. So I think that merits her inclusion on our essentials list. And that actually rounds off our essentials. That's the end of it, but we only have 48 cards, and the deck minimum is 60. So now we need to create some filler cards to round off our deck. The first thing we're going to do that is we're going to scroll up and look at the stats. When we are looking at our stats, we're really looking for 2 things. We are looking at this thing called the curve cost, which is the graph of how many cards you have at each ink. And we want to make sure that we can play at least 1 card on every turn. Like right now, we don't have any cards that cost 3. So on turn 3, we're either going to have to play a 1 cost card or a 2 cost card or play nothing. And the problem with playing a 1 cost card plus a 2 cost card is sometimes you're going to play 2 cards that are inkable, and that's going to set you behind and make it harder when you're trying to play your 5th ink and your 6th ink. The second thing we're looking for is what percentage of our cards are inkable. Ideally, you want to have around 25% non-inkable and 75% they can be turned into ink, because you don't want to run out of steam halfway through the game. Like, imagine if you had Genie in your hand and you had 5 ink in your inkwell and you just kept drawing cards that couldn't be turned into ink. You'd be stuck there. Let's keep that in mind as we go into fill in our deck, that we don't have any 3s right now, so we need some 3-drops. Or if we're going to try to replace that with 1s and 2s, we'd strongly prefer that they both be inkable. Which is okay because we have some wiggle room, because right now we have 38 ink and only 10 not ink, which is better than our 1-to-4 ratio we normally want. 3-to-1 ratio, sorry. Okay, hold on a second. Hold the presses, folks. We forgot 1 essential card here, and that is our 3-drop. That's something that looks screwy there. It's Cheshire Cat. Whenever this character is challenged and banished, you banish the challenging character. So it's a way to slow down your opponents. He can quest for 2 all the time, and eventually your opponents are going to try to stop him, and when they do so, they're going to lose that character. Okay, so what other 3-drops can we add in here as our filler? And when I'm doing the filler cards, my general rule is to just add 2 of them and then see where we end up. So I think a good filler card might be Mother Knows Best. It is a 3-drop, which is something we're looking for, but it's uninkable. And it also has that ability to bounce characters. It's going to slow your opponents down, or if you're playing against a control deck, it's going to maybe give you that winning edge at the very end. Now, looking through the rest of the green cards, nothing really fits that bill. Peter Pan is just a weaker version of Tinkerbell, even though he's a 3-drop. Jasper, maybe arguably he can slow down some opponents, but it's more situational. So let's go ahead. Oh, maybe Duke of Welliston, right? He is a 1-drop, 2/2, so he might be able to stay out there and quest a little longer. He is like Stitch, except for Stitch grows up into Big Stitch. So we will think about him and add 2. So back up to Amber, we can do more of the same thing. Are there any 3-drop cards that really fit? Just in Time, perhaps. Let's add that there temporarily. Part of Your World, not really. All right, and there aren't good 3-drops. We have to think of 1 and 2 drops that are inkable. So perhaps we can go with Hey Hey. All right. And then LeFou is also an option, a 2-drop that quests for 2, but he's weak on the attack. And that's about it. So now we can go back and look at our deck, but we're at 62 cards. So we have some stuff that we can remove. And we also want to smooth it out, make it more consistent. Because now if we look, we have a whole bunch, but a lot of them we only have 2 copies of. So our deck overall is going to be less consistent. As a general rule, when you're adding in your filler cards, you would rather have 4 of the same than 2 and 2, just so you can more accurately predict what kind of behavior your deck is going to have as you're drawing. You want to reduce that luck of the draw. Oh, but you know what? As I'm looking at this, I think Hades might also make the cut into the filler list. So now what we want to do is go ahead and consolidate our filler list. We want to maybe compare some cards to each other and try to get as few unique cards as possible. And an easy way to do this is just to go down your list comparing one card to another. So we have Hey Hey Boat Snack. He's a 1-drop that's inkable, which is good. We want some, oh, you know what, let's look at our ink real fast. Yeah, so we're still about that 25%, 1648, just right where we want to be. More ink is always preferable to none. And we have a little smoother curve right here, right? 1, 2, a little bit less 3s. So again, we have a slight preference for ink. So Hey Hey versus Duke. Well, Hey Hey has this ability called Support, which can add your attack to another character, right? So Hey Hey is going to quest. He also has 2 health. Duke also has 2 health, and he has 2 attack. So is the ability for Hey Hey to give his strength to somebody else better than Duke's 1 extra health on his own, attack on his own? I would say yes, because the Duke is really only going to get his attack if he's going after someone who's trying to stop him, or if he's attacking himself, which he's not going to do as a 1-drop. We're trying to quest as quickly as possible. So I think Hey Hey wins over Duke. Plus what Hey Hey can do is he can add that attack to Simba. Remember, Simba is our 2-drop character. He has 2/3, and we want him to be exerted all the time. So perhaps instead of questing for 1, he's going to take out your opponent's quick characters, their 2 lore character drop. And Hey Hey could even take, if you add that attack to Simba, that makes Simba a 3/3, which is a pretty good on turn 2, attacking on turn 3. So yeah, Hey Hey is better than Duke, so that's 1 ting against Duke. So it's nice, let's compare Duke to LeFou. So again, Duke drops for 1, inkable 2/2. And LeFou is a 2-drop, 1/2, so he's a weaker on the attack, but he quests for 2. So comparing these two, I think the straight rule is that LeFou better fits with our overall theme of questing quickly, right? For 1 more ink, you gain an extra lore. And again, the attack is not going to make the huge deal. So Duke is worse than both Hey Hey and LeFou, so I think it's safe to go ahead and throw him out. Going down our list, we have, we're already at 62 cards. We have Hades. Hades is better than LeFou for sure. Hades has this ability which lets you retrieve a card from your discard whenever you play him. But as a 4 uninkable, I'm not really sure it's worth getting rid of LeFou, our 2-drop 4. Because remember, we don't have that many 3s, so we want a good combination of 1 and 2 inkables. So I don't think Hades' presence is enough to kick LeFou out. That rounds out our characters. Now let's move on to our non-characters, our actions and our songs. we have these Just-in-Times and our Be Our Guest. Just-in-Time is not inkable, and it's really going to only be useful, and it's not a song either, so you have to pay that ink every time. So on turn 3, is it going to be worth it to play that to get out one of our Mad Hatters, Cusco's? See, we have a lot of 5-drop cards, so it might be there, but compared to everything else, Be Our Guest, Mother Knows Best, I think that these ones are going to be higher performing. I think Mothers Know Best is going to be better to bounce our opponent's characters rather than to try to get one of our own. And I think Be Our Guest is going to be a lot stronger in getting any character that we want than Just-in-Time, because we have a lot of cards that are going to ink quickly. We're going to be able to ink every single turn. So the chance of getting this plus one of these, I think on the whole, this is the one to take out. I can see other people making another decision, but that's where I'm going to go with. And then we're going to make just some minor adjustments. Here we're going to look at our stats once more. And we don't have any real late game cards. And I am worried about our tertiary objective. I am worried about going against the control decks, their big late cards. Maleficent, Ursula, things like that. They're heavy hitters. So I think we are going to get rid of one Be Our Guest just so we have one more genie in the mix. Looking all through, this is exactly 60 cards. Most of them are 4s. We have a couple of 2s with Hades because we don't need any extra copies of that. We switched one Be Our Guest for a genie, so there's 3 of each instead of a 2 and a 4. And the only other floating 2 we have is Hey Hey, just for fun. And I think that will just about do it. I'm pretty happy with the way this deck is looking. Let's go check our stats one more time. So we have the 25% non-inkable to 75% inkable. We have a pretty solid curve. We know that we are a little short on our 3-drops still, but we make up for that by having a lot of inkable 1 and 2s. And we still have some power cards there at the very end. So now I'm going to show you how to export this deck into Pixelborn so you can play with it online. So you can save this deck if you have an account on dreamborn.inc. Otherwise, you just hit the export button, go over to Pixelboard, and then copy the following code, right? Just like it says. Then you want to open up Pixelborn, go ahead and go to Collections, Deck, Import Deck, and then paste it right here in this top part. It'll ask you for your string. And then you can give your deck a name. This one I call With a Twist. So the reason I call it that is probably the real secret to deck building, is you don't always have to do it from scratch the way I just did. I found a deck online by another creator called Steadfast. He called Lemon Lime. I liked it, I played with it, but it wasn't just quite right, and it was a couple weeks old. People were adjusting to that style of play. So I made my own variation with it that I got happy with. So it's the Lemon Lime, but with a twist. That's not to say everything I just taught you is invalid, but it is saying you don't have to start from scratch every single time. In fact, knowing those principles that we just went over will help you make better decisions when you're modifying someone's deck that you found. Anyway, on to our exhibition matches.